of work. Before the importance of scheme of work, we have got the components of a scheme of work. Chimene chikupanga kuli scheme uyo ikhale kuli ndi scheme ndi chani. One, we are having week and dates. As shown on a chart, week and dates. This column shows week and dates. Tikwena tilembe kodi mu week 1 tukapuzisa zotani. Week 1 imene ikuyamba pachani. We write the first or the week beginning date. For example, it's Monday to Friday. We write the date that is on Monday and end with the date that is on Friday. Ku madetiko tionetsetsa pamene kulemba madete athu ndekuti ngati week 1 as shown, date la Monday ndi 18. La kumapeto ndi la Friday. Sitika la daily Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. No. Are we together? So tifenga tukupita kuma church kwathuko. We have only Sunday. Right? We have only Sunday. So we are going to write week 1 and write that day's date. Sunday wetu fana kapuziselo ndekuti kokha week 1 ndi day zata. Just because we are going to teach once a week. Another component is success criteria. That's the second component. This shows what the learners are supposed to cover, or what the learners are intended to do, or it shows the intended outcomes of the learners. What do we want our learners to achieve by the end of the lessons. So this is the column, and this column has got a guided sentence, which is learners must be able to zikungwatisonyezera kuti itiwonetsere chimene tifuna mwana athuyo pamene wake akatani akachite achieve. So under the same point success criteria, the verbs, we use action verbs. When writing the success criteria, we use action verbs such as explain, discuss, describe, name, list, state. That is under success criteria. Just because we have got the guiding sentence, which is learners must be able to explain, list, state. Are we together? Yes. We are moving on. Another point is activities planned or planned activities. Under planned activities, we have the co-element. This co-element is the main point. The main point. And this unit is like the sub-heading. But these co-elements are shown in subjects like Bible knowledge, big mathematics, science, agriculture, and the like, except in English and Chiwaya. In English and Chiwaya, the co-elements are like reading, writing, speaking. Those are the co-elements in Chiwaya. Amakanga noti many topic ndameno kuwerenga, kulemba, ndi kuyankhula mwana alankhula zotani, alemba zotani. English in Chiwaya, but in other subjects we have got the co-elements, and those co-elements are shown in a syllabus. Amatonetsa syllabus as well as in a teacher's guide. Zimakhala mmene mumphunzitsa akazida ina zimene zijazo ndikuzona bwino before kulemba. Amazoto topic number 1. What is the co-element? Angopita mu syllabus ayipeza co-element. For the syllabus imakhala ngati guide. Imekumushita guide kuti no achoti topic iyi co-element yake ndi yakuti. So after outlining the topic or writing the topic, you write what you want to teach. You write what you are going to teach. For example, discussing the crossing of the Red Sea by the Hebrew. After looking at the topic, that's miracles in the desert. Under miracles in the desert, what are the subheadings? Or what do you want your learners to know after the miracles in the desert? So you want the learners to explain the crossing of the Red Sea by the Hebrews. That's the first point. Another point under the same topic, you want your learners to describe the provision of manna, quails, and water. These are two different activities, and they will be learned in different periods. Are we together? Ndi marafika wawili osiyana. Ndi topic imodzi komano ndi ma activities ni ntchito zosiyana. Ndati ntchito yoyambirira akuyichita tsiku lina, ntchito ina yonse akuyichita chani tsiku lina. Koma ife pamene tikukapanga scheme of work yathu tizikayika activity ngati tizikayika imodzi just because we are having only Sunday. Kwa churches amene mwina tili ndi mwayo kuti timapanga Chiwaya on Sabbath, ndakuti no tikhoza kuyika ma activities angati awiri. Another point is teaching, learning, and assessment methods. In teaching, learning, and assessment methods, this column shows the methods a teacher is likely to use during lesson delivery. When teaching, we have to change the methods of teaching. We have to change the methodologies for the learners to understand the concept very easier. Examples of the methodologies are like discussion, group work, we can use pair work, we can use brainstorming, teacher observation, as well as individual work. Those are examples of methods a teacher is likely to use during lesson delivery. Another point is teaching, learning, and assessment resources. These are the resources as well a teacher has to use during lesson delivery. A teacher has to prepare the resources in advance for the lesson to be effective. Then when we are preparing the schemes of work, we have to prepare the resources as well. Why? Palima resources zena zimakotengera ndi nyengo amapezeka kwambiri mwina nyengo ina ndi mvula tipanga bwanji timene atisakire tuzimene zijazo tisunge cholinga kamazafika nthawi yathu iyo tikaphunzitsire mosavuta. Another point or another component is the references. In this case, it shows the references where the topic have been captured. Akungoonetsera kutithandizira kuti kodi tingachite rifa zimene mwatilembera zitizipeza kutiko. One, as I've already said, we have got a syllabus, we have got a teacher's guide, as well as a learner's book. Ndati pamene skimu yathu iyamba kwa kulemba, munthu wina kudangobwera kuti kodi zimene zalembedwa apa ndikazipeza kuti. Ungompasa ma document amene wawo apeza ma activities omosadani. Mosavuta. And the last column here, that's the end of the components of schemes and records of work. One, we are having week and dates, success criteria, planned activities, teaching, learning, and assessment resources, teaching, learning, and assessment methods, and references. Remember, schemes of work and records of work, these are two different things. Now let's move on by looking at the importance of schemes of work. Outcomes and remarks. Okay, and the first importance of schemes of work is that it helps a teacher to prepare teaching, learning, and assessment resources well in advance, as I've already said. Another point, it helps a teacher in making lesson plan. We are going to see that a lesson plan comes from schemes of work, and we are going to see how we are supposed to do. Another one, it guides teaching and learning activities. Schemes of work guides teaching and learning activities. Another point, it helps continuity in the work and sequences in the learning process when a teacher has been posted away. If a teacher writes schemes of work, then leave the school or leave the church, it helps the one who take over the class to continue or to teach the class very easier. Zimachitika apeza umuntu achita bwino prepare class ya mungu atsawa achita prepare china chicho sengu zapo zati transfer wapita kuti wapita ku malo kwina kwagwira ntchito munthu uja kwena zimene zidanachita prepare zitazitani azisiye in order for the one who take over the class to use. Chimodzimodzi tikapita mumachurch mwine ife tili busy tikuchoka tupita madera ena ake tachita kale prepare tisanyamule. We have to leave the documents so that the other teacher will use the same document. Now, let's look at the factors to consider when preparing schemes of work. What are some of the factors that has to be considered when teaching, when preparing schemes of work? One, we are having the teaching syllabus. Zimezi ndi zinthu zimene zizofunikira kuti scheme of work ioneke choncho tikhale ndi chani. So we are having teaching syllabus. This is an example of a teaching syllabus. Tikwena tikhale nayo. Remember, it is a curriculum document that outlines the topics to be covered for each and every subject. So a teaching syllabus has to be there. Another point that has to be considered is class ability. Under class ability, it is very, very important for the teacher to know the ability of the learners. How? For example, when you are assigned to teach the adventures, you know the level of the adventures, that the adventures is from 0 up to 9. And the pathfinders are from 10 up to 15. And the feed that can be given to the adventures is very different to the feed that can be given to the pathfinders. So we have to consider when preparing. Ntchito yathu ija tiziona ndi ntchito imene ndifuna ndikampatse mwanayu ndi mwana wa chichepere ndikonze ntchito yotani tikumvana eti komanso mklasi muja anaja we have got learners of mixed abilities. Other learners are fast learners, others are slow learners. So when preparing schemes of work, we have to consider this point. Kuti kodi ngati class yanga ili muli ma fast learners ndi ma slow learners. Ntchito yanga ndikapanga prepare chonchi zitha bwanji. It's better to underplan than to overplan. Just because pamene ana ina ma slow learners akukanika muja ndekuti iweyo ma fast learners mwina achita achieve chinthu chicha. You are going to give them other things to do while you are assisting the slow learners. So we have to know the ability of the class. Another point is learners' previous experiences. Learners' previous experiences. When preparing, we have also to consider the previous experience of the learners. Nditu mwana uja sudi amakhalisa kudziwa pokena kake amakhala naja kena kake babdani akudziwa tinthu ngati mmene tijato we have to consider as well ndicho ngati pamene kuphunzitsa paja lesson yathu ikhale effective. Another point is school and annual calendar. A teacher has to know the school calendar. If the term has got 13 weeks, he or she has to know that. If it is 10 or if it is 15. To avoid under-planning or over-planning. Ndichimodzimodzi machechi mwatumu. Nthawi zina makhala kuti no pali masabathi ena yakochita dziko dawa tikuzakhala ndi mwina retreat kwina kwake kapena ndine chaoko kwina kwake. Teza mbiri ngamapanga zimene timakhoti kudani tikudziwa. So we have to plan according to the calendar. Another one is the time. A teacher must know the period allocation per subject per week. Tikakhala ku school Sunday 1 up to 2 is 30 minutes. A period is 30 minutes. Sunday 3 up to 8. A period is 35 minutes. So we have to plan or we have to see the time as well. Tikatipita ku church, adventures cannot learn a lesson for 35 minutes. Dizone? Maybe 10 minutes. After 10 minutes, wapunzira, kenaka you go for another activity. Sports, tamanga. After 10 minutes, so mgunjosa mupitisa sokuti kwa activity in. So we have to consider the time when preparing our schemes and records of work. The last factor is teaching, learning, and assessment resources. A teacher must be resourceful. Tinamva zimezo ena sonda mvora futukuza kale. Tumapeza ndi mwina maskulu mu we don't have resources or enough resources. Ndana sapunzira. We have to improvise. We have to use locally available resources. For example, that's improvisation. Ndabweresa resource kuiga about kupunzisira lesa kudani akuona. Instead, mwina ndikanatona zoda ndikhale ndi maskimu awa ndikawire wina aliyese. Kama just because I cannot manage, that's why I have improvised a chart or I have come with a resource. So make sure when teaching the lesson you have to use the resources. Ana jambo kala ndishidwi akamapunzira. Uyu ndi Yesu. Uyu ndiona chisomba chinamumeza abashamulavula aziona ma pictures yaja. The lesson will be effective. So please, when going into our respective churches, during lesson delivery or when scheming, please, we have to scheme or we have to indicate the resources we are going to use during our lessons. I have this booklet. This is a scheme. Tikapita ma station alambiri kungwaza ndifuna scheme. Amakulitsa. Ambiri ndi 1000 kwa chayoka. Titatola tagula iyi ndikuilembera. Tilembera ndakuti makota angapo. First tungolembera kota imodzi ndikuisiya. Tikumvana eti? Rather than tikapeze kope draw mizere. Zimene zaso it takes time. Mwina so that's why timakhala ndi ulesi olemba mayani maskimu. Tikatiyanga chiseva nova tinambophunzitsa koma maskimu njani? Tilibe. So we have to go in our the different stationaries to look for a book like this one. Amene mwina mutafune kulionera pafupi mutha kundipeza kuti muone. Tikumvana eti? Okay. Before I go further, is there any question? Yes.
My question is on column number 3. Kusolanga likuwa there we occupy co-element, then we have unit. And when you are teaching, I emphasize which is also the school. Where I element at the art, Nangamatopic at the art, I just want you to highlight this that.
Okay.
If you go away, it's a basic video. You see a basic video. pena bali mupezi kuti yaku mina ndinayo masima isiwa ni mako elements kuti mako elements kwewayo awa ndikaka kwa complexity.
Okay, ndinanena kaye bachiyambi kuneya kuti ndifotokoza ku skulu cholinga titenge knowledge ya skulu ife tikaichite implement ku skulu kwathu ndinale iku ku machechi kwathu ne ifeyo kwewayo tilibe syllabus timagwirisa ntchito mamanyu. That means ndekuti matopic tizikapeza mumanyo komano ko element palibe. Ndekuti tikamakalemba skimu ya twija tikangobwera unit 1 ndikulemba topic imene atitani atipasa, then ma activities tikayanga sisa manyo ya twija amakhoda atigawira bukale bwino. Tikumvane? Yes. Ndakumvani sizi kusiyana chimene tikumbosiyana ndangochita emphasize ndi ko element ndimekusiyana for ko element mumanyo mwathu mulibemo komanso ndimafuna mudziwe kuti kodino kwinako tizilemba bwanji ndifanya kenda kuisa ntchito ya ku school na wangadala kuti kuisa ntchito ya ku school. Yes. Chabwino alipasa so maganizo ena akunena kuti mamanyo athu aja amathaukhala ndi ma main topic ndifane ndinafotokoza pachambo ndi mako elements ndi ma main topic pamene ma unit amakhanga lino majani ma subtopic amene akubwera m'musi pepani ndimene andifotokoze ineyo za ku school as a qualified teacher kwani zimene ndinatani ndinapemphedwa komanso ndinaphunzira kuti no zimene tidagawanezi tikazichite apply. Leka lindakubalalisani mundikuwukira. Okay, tikwaja nthawi wina tiyeni ngaye tikapitiriza ndani tizane mafunso tanenge kumabere. Chabwino. Tikubanga lupogoso nkhani yake ndio mweyi. Okay, now let's move on to records of work. Under records of work, it has got 2 columns. The first column is outcome, and the other one is remarks. Under outcome, what are we going to write? Under outcome, a teacher writes what the learners have achieved. As we are teaching, we have to also to observe our learners. Because at the end or after teaching all the lessons, we are going to evaluate. So under outcomes, we have got also a guiding sentence, which is learners are able to. After the that's what we indicate under outcome column. For example, when we were discussing the crossing of the Red Sea by the Hebrews and describing the provision of the manna, quails, and water. Are learners able to do those activities? It's when you indicate with examples. Learners are able to explain the crossing of the Red Sea by the Hebrews as God told Moses to lift up his stick and hold it over the sea, and the water got divided. Then they crossed on a dry ground. Zimene mafuna lanaja azidziwadi. Have they achieved the success criteria? That's when you indicate under outcome. Then, under remarks, you write the successes, challenges, and the way forward. Pamene mukuphunzitsa mwana uja, mukuchita observe. Palana ena kuchita follow, ana ena sakuchita jani? Follow. Ana ena zina zake zikuone kwa ndani. Zafudete, a teacher has to know. Tukumvana. A teacher has to know. So, for example, the lessons were very good because most of the learners achieved their objectives very well. It was so due to the use of Bible stories that made them understood the concept easier. However, that's the challenge. Right? I'm really did to Abanisa Upanga. Come on, because now Jojo, however, few learners had problems to explain the provision of manna, wells, and water. Therefore, they were assisted, showing the way forward. What the teacher has done after looking at the challenge. So, under remarks, we indicate their successes, challenges, and the way forward. So, we are going to do the same. Timosi tika puzisa. Lesson yatu ya Sunday taipuzisa. How was the lesson? You evaluate. Anaja shida bwanji. Amene ambili anakonza. Kapena lesson yo sina puzise. Ngati suna puzise, what are you going to indicate? The lesson was not taught due to upeleka lesson imesuna dani. Suna puzisire. What will be the way forward? I will teach in the next lesson. Zima tandizira kuti no wina ujakandoendera kandundani. For example, my directors apitano kuma class. Akaona zoti abadi zisana puzise fwaje kuti ande kudapa kwa thandiza kwa kanawa azathandiza siku lakuti. Tikumvani? Okay. Is there any question? Palifunso hapo.
It's not like a question. Maybe just to highlight it. I was checking my manual. If there we have my elements. And if I check with ya, check with the area. For example, when I check with the area, move as an audi, another. And if you need to say you have to discover it. That one is our already. But you discover that another our smuggling. But see you discover it after you live on our journey. If I do not know that I will see. Imagine this is how you go to the college. Check manual.
Ndimamva mafuso chuluka wambiri kumache mwalawa afotokoza bwino basi vuto munayepe tikupanga kuti tichite transfer mwina tikamaona zimene akusache mwaliwa tumakhanga katengera kuti tili ku sukulu and you are failing to transfer the very same skills to your AY scenario. Anakamba je mwaliwa una kuti she has here a teaching syllabus. She showed you. If you are to teaching syllabus, ndiyo imalembedwa apa find a friend achievement class ndi musimu achula chichewa chabwino curriculum requirements and resources. Imeneyo ndi nkhani yathu. Izi zilipo ku Pathfinder, zilipo ku Adventure, ziliponso ku ambassadors, ziliponso ngakhale kuchani kodi kuyana atatu. Ma core elements, a core element is a broad area of knowledge. A very broad what? Area. Nga ndeno umumu ndimango ntagwira ndinapempha kwa Elias curriculum iyi. Ma Pathfinder ose, ma core elements awo ndofanana. Alipo 8. If you check them, there are 8 core elements inside here. Ndingowachula pali spiritual discovery. That's a broad area. Pali saving others. Pali friendship development, health and fitness, organization and leadership development, nature study, outdoor living, lifestyle what? Enrichment. These are the broad areas, core elements. Zimene akunena chemwalizi ndi zenizeni zimene timafanizira kuti tizizidziwa. Tingofananiza izozo zakusukuluzo ndi zitizo kuti ndizi. Tigwiritse ntchito zomwezi kuti tikathandizire vana kuti akachite bwino lomwe. China chimene anachikambapo mwina chimene nava mwina anthu anakamba za schemes. Maona kuti schemes of work umumu tagwiritsa ntchito koma sadagwiritsa ntchito chizungu choti chani kuti schemes. In fact mukatenga curriculum iyi kuma koyambirirapo ndi maona page 5 iyi ananena kuti sample schedule. Anachita kuti sample chani kuti schedule. Sikuti mudzikatenge yayi. Kwa mukhozopanga chofanana ndi chiti choti ndi chimene chocho. Ndi iyi kuonetsera schedule iyi anayipanga for 20. This is for 20 weeks. Okay? Ine iyo kuti 52 weeks. Ndamaganizira kuti munthu mutakhala kuti mukuyipanga ntchito yakalasirira friend mungathe kuyipanga in 20 weeks. Awata kuganizira zimenezo. Ndiye mukayang'ana 52 yotsa 20 ndi 32. Amaganizira zimenezi pa 32 po muli ndi msonkhano wa misasa kwanuko, kuli pa church pali other programs zimachitika, palinso mwina mwapanganso matripi amene mungathe kuyika mutimo kodi muchaka chija, but you have got other weeks amene you dedicate to kuti tichite deliver muchaka chatu kodi kalipira mwi. Imeneyo ndi schemes of what? Work. Mukayang'ananso iyi schemes of work iyo in a nutshell ikumaoneka ngati zimene amanenazo chemwaliwa. Week 1 awawa alemba kuti week 1 kuchokera date ukafika date yakuti chifukwa chonena kuti akukumana every day ngati mwachani kuti mwa wiki. Koma umusadapange izozo izo adanguti wiki chani kuti 1, week 2, week 3. Chifukwa kudzoli mwana nthambi timakumana chani kuti over the weekend. Ndi akanena pa week 1 akuyikaso chimodzimodzi zimene akuti success criteria apapa angoyika zimene tidzatani kuti tidzaphunzitse they are there in our what? Manuals. Chemwaliwa angotithandiza kuti tizitha kudziona bwino lomwe ndi diso lina la kuzindikira basi. But she's doing a great job in front of Bepeni. Tati ndimvetsereni zimayi. She's doing great.
Okay, let's proceed. We are now on lesson planning.
Sorry, may I ask on the skills? I appreciate that format of a skill, especially to a teacher who is a teacher. But I would also find it a bit too cumbersome, too much work, too much writing. to do. And I'm just wondering, are we supposed to stick? I've noticed that we have schemes of work that were given that was done by Blantyre Chiradzulu. Are we to stick to that, or we can use a user-friendly way that I want to use? If it brings out the same things that I expected, the main things that I expected in a schemes of work, is that in order?
Okay. Scheme will not.
Because I would want maybe teachers to have more times to prepare other things more than writing and writing and writing. Because there's a lot of writing to be done in that format. So are we to stick to that, or I can choose or design a more user-friendly way of doing it than following that? Am I allowed to do that?
Maybe you should take that question. We should ask the education department, because that's the parent is the duplication on the verification. You may not take that one. We should call the education department to take that question from the board.
Okay, but then I think that should also apply to the lesson plan, because we like the same question that if we follow the way it is to go, we can customize our model. I'm saying, as they are responding to the questions in the way,
Education ni matiti kupepe. Pabwira bankawa. Ndenda muona mapeya is coming. Ata photocopy odrane na kuti kalembedwe ka scheme akaka ndi mwina kalembedwe ka lesson plan kakuoneka kuti kali ndi ziyango zochuluka kapena kuti muli ntchito yotani kodi yochuluka. Odra manena kuti ine nkadakuona kuti asamatenge nthawi yambirizi azitenga nthawi yambiri pokonzekera kukatani kodi kukaphunzitsa kusiyana ndi kutani kodi ndi kulembalemba. Nde chemwali akuna kuti inenso ndakondwera ndi fusolo mukamamuyankha odreyo mutandiyankheso makamaka zachani kodi lesson plan kodi nafenso tidzichulukitsanso kulembalemba. Ndine mati chemwaliwa asayankhe chifukwa chemwaliwa ntchito imene abwera pano ndikupereka upangiri wakukozetsera izozo. Koma funso limene afunsa odreli likuyang'ana, I think it's tackling a policy. It's more on what? Policy implementation. Koma ifeyo chemwaliwa asayankhire imene tapemphe a education amene who are putting the what? The policy itself. Ndakufunsa kodi makosana ndingalembe zomwezo koma mofewa kuti nimutsotsatira kapena nzitenga idzi kapena nzipanga zija mudatipatsa ino Blantyre Chiradzulu zona education ndefunso ndi amapeya mbwere mudzayankhe kuti chemwaliwa apitirize.
Chimene Dibange alinitawi limited time, right? Mundolo yunadi ndiyake ndikabwera. Thank you. Ali ndibwerezanso tendikhaleni ngati malirazi. Alinitawi funso lanu talimva ndiyankha ndikabwera.
Okay, let's proceed. We are lesson planning. A lesson plan is just an organized structure of important ideas a teacher intends to cover in a lesson. Ndondomeko yophunzitsira. A teacher has to prepare a lesson plan before delivering the lesson. Why? Just because a lesson acts as a reminder to enable the teacher to teach in a logical, order. It guides the teacher, it helps the teacher to teach in a sequence or in a logical order. Without lesson plan, sijambo soti mpuzisama ngobalalika kuti nokodi kwachoka point apite point tiyo zimakhala zovuta. With a lesson plan, a teacher teach in sequence order. Another point, it act as a guide throughout the lesson presentation. A lesson plan act as a guide through lesson presentation. For example, it helps a teacher to know when to ask questions as well as when to use the resources. Another point, it provides them with confidence for teaching or learning process. A teacher teaches with confidence with the help of a lesson plan. Another point, it can be used by the education officials for practical, constructive, or concrete advice. A lesson plan helps the officials to know if learners are really learning. Tijimodzi timanoti ma verifiers mukaona lesson plan kupanga check ma portfolios mwina ana muona kuti kodi day yakuti lesson plan yaphunzira kupanga show is kodi ndizoona dana naphunzira zimene zozo imathandizira lesson plan ija. It also makes easy to assess the achievable goals. Because after teaching the lesson, a teacher has to evaluate. So a teacher knows when to assess, where to assess the learners. That's the purpose of a lesson plan. Now let's move on by looking at the structure of a lesson plan. A lesson plan can be written in different ways, provided the basic principles remain the same. Tima ilemba munjira zosiyana-siyana. Komano what matters is the content. So you can apply also in schemes of work. What is provided or what is needed is the content ya scheming yako waipanga modani. Kodi no scheme zose zofunikira zilimo, ma resources alimo, ma references alimo, ma references kani ma methods kani ma activities titakupanga plan beti ngapangire plan. Komano content yokhale yodani ikhale yoyenerera. Chimodzi so lesson plan. So I have got a sample lesson plan. It is from schemes of work. Lesson plan hii ndailemba yachokera kutiko ku scheme tinapanga ija. We are having the preamble. Preamble consists of the following: 1. Class. Ndaika standard 6. Chifanya na kuti scheme ndachita prepare kwa kuisa ntchito ma resources za standard yani 6. Ndakuti ngati tili kwewayi tikapo class. Class, ranger, voyager, companion. Chifukwa jani scheme yathu taishita prepare kwa kuisa ntchito manyo ya jani ya ma class ameno. Then we are having ndakuti pa subject ipo ndinaika Bible knowledge for ndi mabuku amenda kuisa jani ntchito. Ndakuti pa subject ipo tipanga skip sidika subject nanga kama present manoli ni subject yakuti kama puiso church timango puiso tizinza pa class. Then we are having the co-element. Ndaika God the Father as the main heading. So the co-element of the lesson plan should be the same with the co-element from the what? Scheme. Tikumbatenga zomwe zitazinamba ku scheme zija ndikubweretsa no ku lesson plan. Chimodzi ndatife co-element yathu tikaika na spiritual discovery aja for ndo tino ma sub topic azibwera mmosi mwakeni. Then we are having unit. Unit ndakuti first of atipatsaso mujani mumanyo yathu. Another point, we are having success criteria. Remember, a success criteria has got a guiding sentence which is learners must be able to what we want our learners to achieve by the end of the lesson. So must be able to explain the crossing of the Red Sea by the Hebrews. Sitinapatikize ma activities awiri atenga activity ngati imodzi. 40 lesson plan ngati imodzi. Then we are having teaching, learning and assessment resources. Teaching, learning and assessment resources, we are going to indicate the resources that we are going to use during lesson delivery. For example, lesson momo, we have got the copies of the Bible or Bible stories, we have learners experience, we have illustrations or pictures. Tisanapitilile, we are having date and time. See, we made tukapusa lesson plan, tukapusa lesson yatu omaso ntawi tukapuzisa ntawi ya itali banja. And the lesson is for 35 minutes or 10 minutes. We have to show. Now, tikulowa nkati, we are having teachers activities and learners activities. Teachers activities, these are the activities that will be done by the teacher only. And on the other side, the activities will be done by the learners. Introduction, that's the first point. Under introduction, we have to ask learners, our introduction should be from known to unknown. We have to ask learners what they have already known before the new concept. Tisapofikira Mungu abanga introduce lesson yatu ntayo mwenye. Tiafuse zina zagama kona na jandiza mbira ya kudziwa. Tikoza kwafusa atimbire mwina nyimbo, kayati nene ama verse, but the introduction should be should link with the topic. Zizitolelana nditu tafuse zina zake za mbuya kuzidziwa kumatikati yanganisisa zikhauli zikubwera sikomona zikufana nyako nizimetu fuatishire jani. Introduce. For example, ask learners, whom did God use to rescue the Hebrews from Egyptian slavery? Akudziwa kuti anayeza anthene akanapita kukapolo. Anakungwa afusa naja, who rescued them? Anapulumutsa ndani? Ndeo kare anaja akubwesa maasa lao, Moses and Aaron. Ukatero ndekuti anaja watenga kuzinthu zimene akudani akudziwa kale kufika kuzinthu zimene sakudani sakudziwa. Then after answering the question, then you are going to introduce that day's topic. Moses and Aaron rescued the Israelites or the Hebrews. Now today we are going to learn how they crossed the Red Sea. Ndekuti anaja tachita linki zinthu zimene akuzidziwa kale zija akupitirira nokuti azidziwa ziti zina zimene wale zachilendo. Then we are having the developmental steps, ndondomeko yophunzitsira. Under developmental steps, we have to use the method that will be learner-centered. Njira zimene tikuena tigwise ntchito zokuti now we have to involve all learners. Learners should participate. Osati tizingokhali zingabanga guide zinatele ayi. We have to make them busy. For example, in step 1, ask learners to brainstorm the meaning of the term miracle. Remember, the topic is miracles in the desert. Tufuna no adziwa kuti what is a miracle? Ndishani chimene miracle ndishani? They have to think. Tikumvana? Takumazani? Yeah? Hey. Okay. So after step 1, then you are going to have different ideas from the learners. Pamene bajaba tabanga bize waje. Wina kwesa ganizo lake, wina kwesa ganizo lake. Then after that, a teacher has to intervene by bringing the correct meaning of the word. After that, we have to go to another step, or we have to use another method in another step. For example, step 2, they could read from Exodus. That is to say, a teacher is going to use a Bible as a resource. We have to indicate, tikamane lesson plan yatu ija, tipange show. Anaja, azidziwa kuti panopa izitapanga tamaliza tikupita ku step iyi. Then step inayo we have used a Bible as a resource by reading the story. Then you have to group the learners. We have to ask learners to be in groups for them to discuss, zimene taphunzitsa zija, tawerenga zija, they have to discuss in groups, they have to share their ideas. So when they are sharing their ideas, what is the teacher doing? A teacher has to supervise the groups to see and hear what the learners are discussing. Those are different methodologies. Group work is the learners are doing group work as well as the teacher supervising at the same time. After that, it's when we ask the learners to share their ideas to the class. Then we have to give them chance to explain to them to the whole class. Group Then at the end, a teacher has to give the correct explanation. From there, after giving the last explanation, a teacher has to ask questions here and there to see if the learners have really understood the concept. Then you can give them the assignment and the like. Lesson yata simple and straightforward. Lesson plan kwambiri we have to involve learners much. Mphunzitsi utazingothandizira mwako ndiyako ntchito imakhala iwanati cholinga tufuna at the end of the lesson akhale kuti adani apezapo china chake. That's lesson plan. Then after conclusion, we have got a lesson evaluation. Under lesson evaluation, when a teacher is teaching, he or she is teaching at the same time observing the learners. So under lesson evaluation, a teacher has to indicate what the learners have done. Are the learners able to explain the concept given? Have they achieved the success criteria? Mphunzitsi no yekha zimakhala ndi iye mphunzitsi mmene wayiona lesson ije ndi zimene achita zatheka amvadi ngati sizinateka. Kodi choyenera ndi mphunzitsi achite ndi chani? Litichi zimangotengera ndi kuti lesson yo yaenda motani. So that's all about the lesson plan. So please, when you go out there, you have to prepare your lesson plan before teaching. A lesson plan, it is very important in different ways. That's the end of a lesson plan. I don't know if there's any question. Yes. Ngati aphunzitsi ku school, we plan it on holidays. Tikafika ku church, ndi chimene mafandi pemphe. Nthawi zambiri timapeza tachita appoint aphunzitsi odapite maklasi, oti akaphunzitse ana ati. Ndeti mangowapatsa kuti manyo ndi maklasi akuyamba next week. Ndiye mphunzitsi uja mwina alibe nthawi yotatani achite prepare. Mwina chimene ndingapemphe ma education directors m'mipingo. Pamene achita appoint anthu kuti tifuna tithandize klasi yakuti. Tionetsetse kuti nthawi ya maklasi aja asanafike tapasebe mpata kandi wiki imodzi achite plan yani scheme. Akachita plan ayicheke. Akachita check ndekuti mphunzitsi polemba lesson plan ndiya nthawi imene ufuna ukatani ukaphunzitse lesson plan yanga ndilemba lero lesson yanga ndilemba lero madzulo mawa ndukatani ukaphunzitsa kwewa. Pamene scheme ukangamba kupanga prepare week 1 uyipanga prepare mpaka skimu yonse kandi ya kota yatha yonse ukhaliwa bangiratu pamene script lesson plan izibwera nothenera sema ufuna ukatani ukaphunzitse.
Thank you. Then imafuna ifubanu banati tinali linkawedi ndibali yonna kuti tizikokhalira kulemba
ayi
mmene mwafotokozera kunena kuti skimu mumalemberatu mmene Tom amaphunzitsa nthaija anakambako za one law of club directors mmene tikupanga ma planned activities apachaka kapena programming ndikhulupirira nthawi yokonzesera skimuso inenekaso kumakhala ngati imeneyoyo ndino kusiyana ngati pali chinthu choti mwina itha kumapanga nthawi ni nthawi ime ndi lesson plan koma iyo titatha kuti tayikonzeseratu ndiye kuti zolemba zikhala zitatichepera ndiye tikusokozeni mwatiunikira zonse sitingazidziwe tsiku limodzi komano mwagwira ntchito yotamandika kwambiri.
Yabwina ndingofotokozabe mbali ya uku kumalena activities zikuoneka ngati zachuluka. These are the expected answers. Pali ena amata osalembako kanthu mwina angolemba ku answering apangolemba brainstorming koma ineyo ayilaki kuika possible answers amene mwana uja akhoza kumatani kumapereka. Why? Ndithopeza ndalemba lesson plan yanga iyi ndaphinjika munjira ina yake nditha kuwatumizira anzanga ku church mundiphunzitsire class yanga, this is my lesson plan. Ndekuti mphunzitsi wina amene akutenga over class iji akangoyiona aphunzitsa mosatani mosavuta ndiye mwina ndifake zikondi kuti zina zizolembapo zikutani zikuchuluka. These are the possible answers amene expected answers olino anaja mwina zitha kutani kupereka. Ndaona mkono kumbuyo kuti ine kuona kwanga ndekuti aika portfolio yomodzi komanda matagi aja achita show kuti iyi ndi class yakuti iyi ndi class yakuti komanda mphunzitsi amene akwanira kulemba scheme ya maklasi onse amene akutani akuphunzitsa chimodzimodzi lesson plan alemba ya class inayi alembanso ya class inayi. Lukumbi andakamamveka bwino tikhale tete timvetsere anzathu.
Education. Our way to present your presentation is okay. When I come maybe from this house, it will be the